And our next game is Indiana Jones and the Xbox 360, also known as The Great Circle. It is the return of machine games, first person Indiana Jones. We've seen this before. This trailer was interesting, I think, because it kind of showed more of machine games sort of flair for these kind of tense dialogue sequences. Like this, it's not quite on the level of Milkshake Nazi, but it's a pretty cool little scene, I think. That kind of shows off what they're going for. And I got to say, throughout it, I was initially skeptical of Troy Baker playing as Indiana Jones, but he actually does kind of sound like younger Harrison Ford in the original Indiana Jones film, you know, more so than he did in Dial of Destiny when they did the flashback sequences at the beginning, where his voice felt not quite right for the younger looking Indiana Jones. You know what I mean? It was like, it was odd. And this actually does feel suitably old school. I will say though, this is a nice looking game, but it's not one necessarily pushing like crazy tech or anything, which personally I'm okay with. I think it's going to be smooth, and I think it's visually attractive, even if it's not amazing. They're not doing anything like that we've not seen, or that's okay. It's completely okay. But I'm pretty stoked for this. I don't know what do you guys think, Alex? I mean, you're also excited about this, I believe. Also a Machine Games fan.
Yeah, I mean, I also just want to see Indiana Jones doing things. The one thing I noticed with the trailer that I really liked is that this time you got some more of the classic Indiana Jones punch sound, which is iconic. And also, if you've ever heard like gunshots in an Indiana Jones film, especially from like a revolver, they're like stupidly punchy. Like levels of ridiculousness about how punchy they are. And I think I heard that a couple times. Like the gunshot audio sounded really, really great. At least for the first person shooting segments. I can't really comment about the cutscene audio. But that was all great. One thing though, like I just said with Fable, I would actually like to see uninterrupted gameplay, but maybe that's just not fit for what this type of showcase was, because they did after the fact dedicate a lot to blops. So maybe there wasn't the time for that, but I did like at least that we got to see a longer form cinematic there, showing off, you know, something. I think the scenario is actually very interesting. Like Crisis, you know, like the boat in the ice. It's like, how did it get up there?
While I was watching it, I was like, looks like someone had a little trouble parking their boat.
My feelings exactly. And actually, if I were to guess, so like the cinematic ends with like presumably the boat falling down the mountain. I almost could imagine a set piece level where you are doing combat while a boat is falling down a mountain. Which would probably look hilarious.
That would be excellent.
So that's, you know, that's what I kind of got out of it. Cause you know, Indiana Jones, like, I don't want to talk about the fourth film, but, you know, there's a lot of moments where like you're on a moving object and, you know, not you, Harrison Ford as Indiana Jones is on a moving object and punching and shooting people. In fact, that happens almost in every film, I think. It's a conveyor belt. It's a tank. It's a car.
That's something Naughty Dog also really utilized for Uncharted games, I'd say.
Yeah. So in that case, I imagine we're going to see that in the game. But also, based upon the other stuff that they've shown in the past, it does seem like there's going to be like slightly more wider level design in areas where you're just you know, stealthing around and sleuthing. So,
dude, I got to say though, that right before that boat sequence, right at it's about 1:17 or so, or 1:20, they walk into the deck of the ship there, and there's the frozen Nazi on the ground holding, I guess, the stone that they're looking for. But when they first walk in and see it, I swear it looks like he's clutching his phone.
Yeah, that's what it's like. Totally a guy in the corner going.
He's like, oh god, you gotta get this last text out before I freeze to death. That was comical.
I think with this game, it does look quite good overall, but maybe this trailer isn't showing it off at its best, because in these more narrative type sequences, you do see the faces a lot more and you see the facial animation a lot more. and it's just not quite at the same level, I think,
No.
as maybe like a Naughty Dog style, Uncharted 4 style presentation.
Yeah,
where
it's not even at that level, I'd say.
yeah, where it does look a bit more natural and you're getting the really nice performances. You're getting that across. Here, it feels like there's a bit of a disconnect. It's not quite there. So I think the gameplay, like the shooting gameplay, the whipping gameplay, that all looks good. Here with the character performances, I'm like, it's just falling a little bit short of kind of like that super polished, like AAA narrative focused ideal. It still looks good, but it's just a little short of that in my personal opinion.
Yeah.
But it mostly looks quite good.
I agree, but I also want to stress that I think that's ultimately not that important in the end, because that's the kind of thing we've kind of somewhat asked for, I guess. Is like more, I don't know what the budget on this is, but more sustainable game creation in the AAA
Yeah,
space.
that's true. That's true.
This is the kind of stuff that gets really, really expensive and bogs down development a lot,
Yeah.
right? Like when
Yeah.
Naughty Dog started setting that bar, a lot of other companies tried to meet them there, and now we've seen a rise of that stuff. And it is admittedly very cool looking, and it's very impressive when done well, but is it always worth it? I'm not so sure.
Yeah,
It's very expensive
It's
to do
like
it. I don't
that
think
scene. It's like that scene in Uncharted 4 where Nathan Drake's nose is bending, or the scene in
Yeah.
The Last of Us Part 2 where Ellie is taking off her shirt. And these are scenes that took like weeks. A long time.
There's
to do
like
it.
insane stuff in there where
Yeah,
you're like,
yeah.
okay, that's it's a very quick scene, but you know that what they're doing is expensive and time consuming.
Yeah.
And I think for this, to me, this looks very game-like in a way that works for me. I think I'm totally
Yeah.
fine with this aesthetic. It's still appealing. It's very likely still id Tech.
looks
If I had
looks
to wager,
Right.
if I had to wager, it's probably not using the latest iteration as we see in Doom, the Dark Ages necessarily, but I'm sure there's been improvements, changes since Eternal, and they've had to do adaptations to their own workflow and what they're trying to do
Right.
with this game, which is obviously different from Doom. But also, it looks like the cutscenes themselves, we were just talking about them, they are at least presented at 60 FPS and seem to be real time in the engine. If I recall, the last Wolfenstein games mostly relied on pre-rendered scenes. Like they would pop
Most
up
of the time,
videos
yeah.
for any major scene, it was just a video.
Yeah, and it was 30 FPS always, so
Yeah.
it was jarring.
Exactly.
They had some like random
They did-
cutscenes that were
yeah.
real time. For example, in
That's right.
What's the name of the sequel with his girls? I forget the name.
Oh,
Youngblood.
Youngblood.
Yeah.
Right? The Youngblood. That one had, at least the opening cutscene is real time, but it's like a 30 FPS cap, and it's kind of awkward.
That's nasty. Yep.
Yeah, especially, like on PC, it's just like, why is this capped at 30? Yeah, I hope this means kind of like Riddick and other games that these people have a pedigree on, that's like real-time cutscenes finally. Because, that stuff scales really well. 10 years down the line, you can load up the game at 16K, on your RTX 70,000 or whatever it's going to be called by then.
And for what it's worth, given the pedigree of Machine Games and id Tech, I'm sure this is going to be a pretty solid performer on the consoles. It's going to run pretty well and look good, and it's going to be a solid
Agreed.
technical experience, I think.